Top military commanders in Ethiopia and Tigray agreed on hindered humanitarian access into Tigray.
Elon Musk has sacked all but one staff from its African office in Ghana. Good afternoon, our dear viewers. Welcome to the 1 p.m. news edition, coming to you live and direct from Golfe TV Africa here in the city of Cotonou. I'm Hazel OGOIGBE and I'm with my partner
Metohuey ADOGLO. How are you doing this afternoon, Hazel?
My voice is stressed, but anyway, we have to work.
Yeah, work we shall.
All right, now starting with the news on the local scene. In the following reports on political actors share their take on the reforms of the party system and the impact on the upcoming 2023 parliamentary elections. For information in the following report.
Ça a des impacts positifs dans la mesure où nous avons moins de partis politiques qui existent aujourd'hui au Bénin et nous avons moins de listes aux élections qui sont.
I believe it has positive impacts in the sense that we have fewer political parties for the upcoming January 2023 elections. Currently, there are only 8 parties compared to the 30 we had previously, thanks to the reform of the party system. However, political migration remains a problem in spite of this reform. Obviously, not everything can be solved in 2 or 3 years. So we look forward to seeing what the reform has in store for us in the future. We really wish to have 2 great blocks, a block of the opposition and another of the majority.
Pour que, à la longue, nous aurons de vrais grands partis politiques, pour que désormais nous aurons au moins 2 blocs opposition comme mouvance.
Et ce qui a changé, ça a permis de diminuer les partis politiques. Ça a permis aux hommes, à la veille des élections, que si on ne me positionne pas ici.
This has allowed us to reduce the number of political parties we had. Moreover, it helped us determine the exact status of each candidate. There is much more seriousness, and the political parties are better structured than formerly. Today, the party is national, compared to what was done before, where there were city parties or even neighborhood parties. The 10% system was voted in order to force the parties to have a national representation in order to better structure their activities.
Pour cela qu'ils ont voté la loi pour mettre le système aussi de 10%. Pour encore peser sur les partis, pour leur dire qu'ils sont obligés d'avoir une représentation comme ça se doit au niveau national.
L'intention n'était pas mauvaise, on voulait réduire les partis, on voulait aussi qu'il y ait moins de transhumance.
The intention was good. We wanted to reduce the number of parties. We also wanted to reduce the number of political migration. However, as far as political parties are concerned, there are far fewer of them today. But on the other hand, regarding political migration, it is quite a different matter. People leave UP to go to BR and vice versa. Likewise, think of the PRD party, which merged with UP and became UP Le Renouveau. I wonder if the law have really allowed all this. It is necessary that all the political parties meet to evaluate this law and eventually readjust it to achieve the objectives. The outcome is mixed, and therefore the objectives have not been fully achieved.
Le bilan est mitigé et les objectifs ne sont pas totalement atteints.
Now moving on to stories coming in from Nigeria. So the World Health Organization has trained about 300 assistant medical public health professionals and volunteers in Nigeria, intend to boost preparedness and response to health emergencies in the country. Speaking at the opening ceremony at the capacity building, learning and training of the ADOGLO search team in Abuja, WHO representatives to Nigeria, Walter Mulumbo, said the preparations and early, rapid and execution of the outbreak response strategy are critical in detecting, containing and mitigating the spread of a potentially dangerous infectious disease. We have more for you on that.
We are dealing with weakened and overrun public health system and social safety nets. We are dealing with insecurity that has generated humanitarian crisis and which require customized approach to respond to emergencies that are flagging Nigeria in those areas. You will recall that at some point we thought Nigeria was polio-free, not knowing that polio was spreading in one of the bastions in the northeast. So we need to make sure that while we are strengthening our system, we also address our capacity to respond in settings where humanitarian emergencies are going on.
Solutions that reflect national and local needs. It is in line with this that the Federal Ministry of Health has embraced the WHO Afro flagship projects to improve the capacity of all member states to prepare, detect, and respond to public health emergencies. The strengthening and utilizing response groups for emergencies such aims to ensure governments are equipped to mobilize resources and respond to public health emergencies within the first 48 hours in the context of strengthening national capacities for effective response to health emergencies. It is government-led and builds on existing successes with full participation of relevant national and sub-national stakeholders for a collaborative multi-sectoral support system.
In Nigeria, at least 12 people have been killed in a petrol tanker explosion in north-central Kogi. The tanker had a brake failure along a major road in the Ofu Council area on Thursday night when it collided with a vehicle obstructing the highway, causing a fireball, a police spokesman revealed to the press.
Then exploded in Nigeria's north-central Kogi state, police said on Friday. The tanker had a brake failure along a major road in the Ofu Council area on Thursday night when it collided with a vehicle obstructing the highway, causing a fireball, a policeman spokesperson told the press. The vehicle crushed cars on the way and 12 people were killed. BC Kazim, with Nigeria's Federal Road Safety Corps, said 18 people were involved in the crash. 7 sustained various degrees of injuries, while the remaining 11 were burnt beyond recognition at the scene, Kazim said in a statement. The road has been cordoned off, and road safety workers are working to identify the victims. Such crashes are common along most major roads in Nigeria, with new measures introduced by the country's Road Safety Corps failing to curb their occurrence. Kogi is a known hotspot, with more than 10 people killed in a similar crash in September. Top military commanders from the federal government of Ethiopia and its embattled Tigray region have agreed to allow unhindered humanitarian access to the region and from a joint disarmament committee following last week's truce. They signed the agreement Saturday, November 12, after days of talks in Nairobi. Warring sides in the Ethiopian conflict agreed on a peace roadmap on Saturday. The chief of staff of the Ethiopian Armed Forces and the head of the Tigrayan forces signed an agreement in Nairobi, Kenya, that they said calls for disengagement from all forms of military activities. Both parties assented to protect civilians and facilitate the delivery of humanitarian aid in war-torn northern region of Tigray. The African Union led talks in Nairobi followed the cessation of hostilities agreement signed by Ethiopia and Tigray leaders in South Africa last week.
To express our full commitment for bringing peace and stability to our people and country. Therefore, we will fully dedicate ourselves to implement the Pretoria Agreement and this declaration. To this end, we would like to affirm our full commitment to the people of Ethiopia, to this panel and world.
We have suffered a lot of misery over the last 2 years and still continue to suffer. The commitment we are making today is with the hope and expectations that our people's suffering will come to an end soon.
The commanders who had been meeting since November signed the agreement on November 12. The agreement states that the disarmament will be done correctly with the withdrawal of foreign and non-Ethiopian military forces from Tigray. Former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo, who was helping to facilitate the talks, said Saturday that humanitarian aid should have resumed Former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is also involved in the talks, thanked the commanders of their commitment to peace. According to the lead negotiator from the Ethiopian federal government, the next meeting of military leaders will most likely be held in Tigray in mid-December before a final meeting in Addis Ababa, the Ethiopian capital, in January. The Tigray conflict began in November 2020. The brutal fighting spilled into Amara and Afar regions as Tigrayan forces tried to break the military blockade of their region. The war in Africa's second most populous country, which marked 2 years on November 4th, has seen abuses documented on both sides, with millions of people displaced and many famine. It reignited in August after months of lull that allowed thousands of trucks carrying humanitarian aid into Tigray. Phone and internet connections to Tigray are still down, and foreign journalists and humanitarian researchers remain barred, complicating efforts to verify reports of the ongoing violence in the region.
After 621 arrests made following October 20 protest in Chad, the Chadian government have for the first time publicly admitted the figure of more than 600 arrests mentioned by several local and international non-governmental organizations after these demonstrations against the extension of 2 years in power of General Mahamat Idris Deby Itno.
621 people, including 83 minors, have been arrested in Chad since the violently repressed opposition protest that left some 50 people dead on October 20. The public prosecutor in N'Djamena announced Friday. Around 401 people have appeared in court and another 220 before an instructing magistrate, according to N'Djamena prosecutor Musa Wade Jibrin. This is the first time that the authorities have publicly admitted that the figure of more than 600 arrests mentioned by several local and international NGOs after these demonstrations against the extension of 2 years in power of General Mahamat Idris Deby Itno. Local and international NGOs have been saying for 3 weeks that dozens and even hundreds of people were killed in several towns on Thursday. However, the government has so far only acknowledged only 50 deaths by bullets and more than 300 injured, including 10 killed among the forces of order. President Deby, who was extended in office for 2 years at the beginning of October by a National Reconciliation Forum boycotted by a large part of the opposition and major rebel groups, has always claimed that the 20 October demonstrators were planning an insurrection to overthrow the government. The 38-year-old Mahamat Idris Deby was proclaimed head of the government by the military 18 months ago following the death of his father, who was killed by rebels on his way to the front line after 30 years of ruling Chad with an iron fist. The protests organized by opposition parties to mark the date when the ruling military had initially promised to hand over power had been banned. However, thousands of demonstrators marched in Chad's main cities to demand return to civilian rule and condemn what some viewed as France's interference in the country's internal affairs. Since the event of 20 October, 621 people have been arrested by security forces and transferred to the high-security prison, Korotoro, in a high-security location in the desert, some 600 kilometers from the capital. The People's Democratic Party has said that it has every option to challenge the candidacy of the presidential candidate of the All Progressive Congress, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, including his eligibility to contest the 2023 general elections, having been allegedly indicted and subjected to criminal forfeiture judgment for narcotic-related offense by United States courts in Northern Illinois, Chicago.
The People's Democratic Party has said that it has every option to challenge the
We do apologize for that little bit of technical difficulty. Still on the subject of Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the All Progressive Party saying they have, the PDP saying they have every right to challenge Bola Ahmed Tinubu after he was found to have been investigated on charges of narcotics in Illinois, Chicago. We hope that it is ready now. But moving on from that, we still seem to be having a little bit of technical difficulties. We head to Elon Musk and his new purchase of Twitter. In less than 2 weeks since Elon Musk took over the Twitter company, there are already concerns that the company is choosing to ignore key risks in its biggest international growth markets. In less than 2 weeks since Elon Musk took over the Twitter company, we have more for you on that. In less than 2 weeks since Elon Musk took over the Twitter company, there are already concerns that the company is choosing to ignore key risks in its biggest international growth markets. On Friday, November 4th, reports emerged of a massive layoff of employees across its only African office in Ghana's capital of Accra. Till last week, staff of the Twitter company in the company's Accra office had been working remotely since it announced that it would open its first African office in Ghana in April 2021. According to reports, only one employee appears to have been retained in the Ghana office after the job cuts, which also affected the company's India office. The Ghana office was open to some fanfare last year, with the company saying it wanted to be more immersed in African conversations. There are reports that the Ghana staff allegedly sent messages about the end of their contracts to their personal accounts after being denied access to work emails. The termination of employment notice indicates that the last day of employment will be 4 December 2022. This move is against local labor laws, which states the employers must give employees at least 3 months' notice before termination of their contract date. It is also against the law in Ghana to not offer redundancy pay, which the anonymous staff members said they have not received but will get their normal salary. Even before the layoffs, Twitter was going through a tough time in both India and Africa. The company also went through a challenging period in Nigeria last year. Last June, the Nigerian government suspended Twitter's operation in the country, accusing the social media firm of allowing its platform to be used for activities that are capable of undermining Nigeria's corporate existence. The ban was announced just 2 days after Twitter deleted a tweet by President Muhammadu Buhari that was widely perceived as offensive. In the tweet, Buhari threatened citizens in the southeast region following attacks on public property. Nigeria decided to leave the ban only in January this year. Tech experts fear the company will find it even harder to navigate new laws in emerging markets.
Our partners in Ghana had a conversation with tech expert Henry Kobler, who is the lead manager of iSolve Africa. Mr. Kobler gave us his honest perspective.
I think that it was a bit of celebration, which I called into question a bit of exactly what that office is really going to offer. Because I felt that at a point it looked like it was just one of the favors that was just being done to Africans by these tech giants. And again, I called into question what the offices such as Google would have had such impact in our tech ecosystem as Africans. And so for me, this really does not come to me as a surprise, because generally, I think that we're speaking about the great resignation that's sort of coming through with the tech systems. Had been long coming through, looking at what was happening with Netflix, even with Facebook and all of that. So I think that the major part is that, when it gets down to tech systems, people within the ecosystem really sort of understand this trend and do not really get surprised about it, because there's a lot of exits, there's a lot of mergers, lots of acquisitions that really happens over the time. And so at the point where you're finding now that there's a new employer that's coming in, you should definitely know that there could be changes. And again, if you're looking at someone as radical as Elon, you should definitely come in. If somebody is acquiring the company and the very first week he's basically taking out almost half of the jobs of people, how do you do even critical analysis of some of the roles and to be sure that these roles are really not necessarily possible to get some gains for the company? That should tell you he had done a lot of his homework. He brings in trusted engineers from Tesla to basically sit behind the pieces at Twitter. So he had all and everything planned out. And so for him as a business, he's just looking at how basically he can roll in, make the profit, and also just get it attractive. For the employees, generally, there are always ways to address some of these grievances. And I'm sure that if they are not happy, they will definitely find a way to get to the courts and demand some justice for that.
Well,
so I don't think so. Twitter had already been operating and had some level of success with the numbers from Africans. So the office generally was just doing more of assistance and support. And so it might not necessarily impact. And again, the vision of the buyer, Elon, definitely goes way beyond just African. So it's looking at solutions where it's really looking at how it's going to be a competitor to WeChat, which is basically a more successful application in China, and looking at replicating a lot of its models with Twitter. And so I don't think that it would really have a lot of impact. But again, like I said, I wouldn't blame Twitter for such language, especially because if you look at the language which was used for Africans and the language which was used for employees outside Africa, you'd realize that there's some quite differences. There are some severance packages that are being thrown out to the employees that are out there. But with Africans, there's so much silence on anything that they could just be getting in terms of their termination with Twitter. That comes to me as a part where our leaders here and our policymakers definitely are not putting their legs in the right direction. And so we're looking at Twitter today but there are quite a number of multinational companies that are in our country, Uber and the likes, quite a number of multinational companies that are here. I mean, what's the policy in terms of protecting the labor force that they are picking in? That should be one of the things that we should be discussing and looking at. So it might just be Twitter today because it's just based on few people fired from there. But what if the mass action class comes to, let's say, Uber or Bolt or any of the competitor applications that are coming in as international applications? And some of those ones are the policies that I'm looking forward to having local discussions to how we're going to protect people. There's been a lot of cry with some of the applications that are being run here, and let's say the users of these applications have raised a number of concerns where you don't have government or any policy maker making comments or talking about it deliberately. And so I think that relatively the tone, the language, the disrespect and everything that comes in is only because we don't have the rules and we don't have the policies guiding our labor forces when it gets down to the internet sector.
Welcome back to the 1 p.m. English News on Golfe TV Africa. Now, for more information on stories across the continent, we head into the African Newspaper Review. And we'll be right back. Welcome to the African Newspaper Review. I'm Metohuey ADOGLO, and I'm with
Hazel. OGOIGBE. Very beautiful afternoon to you, our dear viewers.
And now let's get started. Sadly, we start off for papers from sports. So we start off with Sports Extra on the Punch. Now, the front page of Sports Extra on the Punch. Road to Qatar 2022 in 6 days. Now, you all know, if you're a football fanatic, you should know, of course, the World Cup is going to be debuting in 6 days in Qatar 2022. Now, all the teams are already getting set and ready to get this started. Now, injured Barsi, doubtful for Portugal clash. We had that on page 7. And also, club confirms talks over Firmino's new contract. We had it on page 5. And Firmino is part of the trial over, that was part of the trial that belonged to Mo Salah, Mane, and Firmino. They were the 3 guys that won the Champions League, that attacked for that spearheaded the Champions League success back in 2018. And looking below that, we talk about Liege coach regrets not signing Boniface. We have it on page 7. Also, Lewandowski dreams of Messi return to Ibaka. We have that on page 9. They get accept pay cut for Old Trafford stay. Now to continue staying in Old Trafford. And Manchester United, he's accepted for his salary to be slashed just to stay in the club. That shows how much love he has for the club. Now looking at the top half of the players, say Fulham 1, Manchester United 2. Garancho grabs last gaps win for the Red Devils, and he celebrated that. It was all over the papers last night. Also, Inks double gives Villains first win away. We have it on page 4. Oyenka Sing City, Mofi, Lookman scores again. We have it on page 10. Also, Simon also on target, successful Akpom and grab assist. A lot of Nigerian players in the diaspora have all been playing and getting a lot of goals, getting into the headlines. This is what, just very sad that the Super Eagles will not make it out of the World Cup, that make it out of this Qatar 2022 World Cup. If not, it will be very exciting to see a lot of just young Nigerian players showcase their talents. Also, Nigeria or England, informer Arsenal striker Balongo set to decide international future. Which will he pick? Will he pick Nigeria or will he pick the English side? Now, obviously, a lot of players will want to pick the English side because, well, the Three Lions are a more solid team than the Super Eagles of Nigeria. This is talking global. He has the chance of winning the World Cup with the Three Lions, but also a greater competition in that particular team. He might get 10 caps, might get 20 caps, and that's all he gets. But if he's in the Super Eagles, he needs to be playing for a team that belongs from his own father, from his father's side, and he can guarantee that he can have at least 50 caps and has enough time to develop as a player, as a Nigerian international. But yeah, the choice is left for him to be made. Now, World Cup break not ideal for Arsenal. A lot of coaches for club sides are very unhappy about the timing of the World Cup and in which it's coming in through this December period. A lot of them, there's a lot of games, a lot of resting. Players should have rested during this holiday period, but now they're all going to be playing in the World Cup. And when they get back to their sides come January, a lot of them might be tired, some of them might be injured. So yeah, there's a whole lot of speculations on how things would end. But basically, a lot of club managers are very unhappy about this. Now, to leave out sports, we move on from Sports Extra, head now to the Daily Guide Ghana. The front page of the Daily Guide Ghana reveals Parliament warned over Ofori Etta probe. We have that on page 3. Also, Ghana-US co-chair Forest Climate Alliance. We have that on page 6. We see now a lot of African countries coming up to have their voice heard on climate issues in the continent, because of course Africa has been one of the countries that Africa releases the least emission and pays the most price on the global scene, as we've seen floods and droughts on the continent. Also, Kwapa Cocoa, president suspended, have that on page 3. You can get that there. Also, government sells Saglemi to developers. You can get that on page 3 of the Daily Guide. Now to a Nigerian paper. I can turn now to Hazel for further analysis on the stories coming from Nigeria. We head now to the Nation, Nigeria. The front page of the Nation, Nigeria reveals APC Tinubu remains a solid, reliable candidate. You personally, I know you probably already have who we can be objective about this. Yeah, even if you have a side that you feel you gravitate mostly to this person, you can be honest. If you have a worthy rival, you can admit and say, no, I do not agree with you, but you're a worthy rival. Do you believe Tinubu remains a solid, reliable candidate? And what would you like to see? And what is your definition of a solid, reliable candidate? Okay,
Toki, if you read in depth into that story, talking about the headlines, you would see that that is a response for a previous story for the People's Democratic Party candidate People's Democratic Party spokesperson coming out to say that Tinubu should be disqualified from the 2023 elections, considering the fact that he was linked to narcotics in the United States of America. And the spokesperson for the People's Democratic Party quoted the Nigerian law, a part of the Nigerian law that states that if a candidate is linked to illegal dealings in another country or even his country, this is a basis for disqualification. And then the response from the All Progressive Congress is saying that he's solid and is reliable, and this is just rumor mongering, this is just peddling, this is just a tool used by other parties to bring down the candidate of the All Progressive Congress. Now, the point is, this should be verified. And if verified and if this is true, then Tinubu should be disqualified as the presidential candidate of the All Progressive Congress, because Nigeria is a very great country. We need leaders that will lead by example. One of the crimes is illegal drug peddling, dealing with narcotics, are already crimes that are against the Nigerian constitution and the Nigerian law. So if he's truly linked to it, then he should be disqualified. There should be no sentiment in it. What about people that come out to say people do change, and maybe even if he was found guilty of narcotics, it's changed. Doesn't mean he can't be a great president. So yeah, he did narcotics, fine. Let's say he did narcotics. And he's changed. He's a changed man now. So now he's reliable and solid. Well, that's a very complicated argument that I'm even dumbfounded. Listening to that perspective, I don't even know the perfect response. But then, moving over to your second question of what are my expectations for the new president come 2023, Nigeria is at a very curious moment right now, because a whole lot of things are just like literally on standstill. So I basically want a presidential candidate that understands the concept of inclusion. Not limiting, tribalism has been a canker that's eaten deep into the rubrics of the Nigerian nation, and Igbo and Yoruba. We need a president that is inclusive, that will make the Igbo man, the Yoruba man, the Hausa man, the Idoba man, the Tiv man to understand and feel a feeling of belongingness. We need a Nigerian president that is hardworking and will give Nigerian entrepreneurs a favorable environment, not a kind of person that will just wake up one morning and will bring laws that will literally stifle, because Nigeria is a country filled with so many youths, and youths are entrepreneurs. But there's an environment a government would influence, and it's like you're stifling the entrepreneurs, and every opportunity for them to leave, they will leave. We need a president that understands the foundation of development, which is education. that is willing to cut down every aspect to make sure that the educational system of Nigeria is thoroughly catered for. Lecturers are comfortable, the teachers are comfortable, professors are comfortable, and Nigeria will now become the true giant of Africa, where you have people from other African countries that can come and school in Nigeria. Rather than Nigerians going there, they come there. And above all, we need a Nigerian president that would simply nip the insecurity in the bud. Insecurity is like a major foundation. When a country is insecure, investors do not come in. And for you two, you've always talked about the fact that for a country to progress, you need partnership. Because India specializes in a particular aspect, you know, Chinese, a particular aspect, United States. So for partners to come into a country, they need to be sure that their personnel are definitely safe. And if Nigeria is continuously and continually in a state of insecurity, then investors will not come in. You know, lights should not even be something we should even be talking about in Nigeria. So, my dear, I could go on and on and on.
I know you
just need a president that understands the problem of the people, understands the peculiarity of the Nigerian terrain, and is willing to handle it free and fair. No game playing.
Yeah, you know what? It just looks at me. I have a dream. I have a dream for a Nigerian president that would look to the entrepreneur, look to the youth, that would support the youth. I have a dream. So yeah, I completely see your dream and I completely understand. All right, moving on from that, you've told Hazel has just told us what she expects from a Nigerian leader. We hope, fingers crossed, we hope we get that leader someday.
Fingers crossed.
Moving on from that, the top hand of the paper says Buhari, page 4. More Buhari. Buhari Oshomole Obi to open projects in River. We have it on page 4. Senate panel queries Neti over 960 million naira for 3 officials. We have it on page 5. Also, Gates Foundation vote 1.4 billion for Agric in Nigeria, no others. We have it on page 5 as well. My surgery experience by Vice President Oshibanjo. We have it on page 8. That's all we have for all the Punch. Moving on from the Punch, we head now to the New Vision, Uganda. The front page of the New Vision Uganda reveals crime, how hackers used 1,840 SIM cards to steal 7 billion shillings.
Whoa, that's a whole lot.
12.
This hacking is, you would think it's just only Nigeria, but apparently it's all around the world.
They're inspired by a lot of Nigerians, actually.
And you know, the thing about it is a clarion call to every single viewer. When you see some messages that tell you to initiate something or to put in, you need to be very careful. Don't initiate anything you're not sure about or anything that you did not pre-order, because at the end of the day, you just give them a leeway to hack into your account and steal your money.
The way Nigerians made Afrobeats popular is the way Nigerians has made cyber theft popular. And you know, Hush Puppy, recently 50 Cent has come out to he wants to make a movie on Hush Puppy.
Oh la la.
Yeah, imagine.
Oh, wow.
So now this person is famous for something bad. Yeah. Then you go on to the site and say, okay, this guy, we need to tell the story of this person. It's a success story in the cyber theft industry. And the worst, you know, the worst case scenario, it will sell. This is a story that will sell.
That's what people want to watch.
Why he has 11 years. You know, we watched this movie Narcos on Pablo Escobar. Pablo Escobar has done a lot of, you know, crimes, drugs.
Yeah.
But then you sit down watching Pablo Escobar, his story and everything, and then you find yourself rooting for Pablo Escobar. You don't want him to die, even though you know he's going to die.
Yeah.
And then you root for him. So this is the same thing. And you know, Africans still have that, you know, it's as a result of not having a lot of jobs, as a result of not having a lot of opportunities.
That's the truth.
And so when you have people that are brilliant and they can't go the right way, the legal way to make money, they go because it is not easy to make steal 7 billion shillings. It's not easy. That brain could have been directed at something else that would have benefited the whole community. But in Africa, there are no opportunities. So what do? They have to go through these means to make money. So yeah, it's a two-edged sword. I'm not saying I'm supported. I'm in support, obviously, no. But then the government should do better. All right, moving on from that, also government vets parish SACCO's leaders. We have that on page 5. Exclusive how Busilika police attack was executed on page 3. Back to maths O-levels, math and geography changing system in Uganda. Apparently Uganda seems to be, when you take a look at Uganda papers, there's always education. So it seems to be now a priority for Museveni and his government, which is very good. Kudos on that. Also to help, as saying donors clash over Ebola funding. We have that on page 6. Moving on from the New Vision Uganda, we head to the next paper of the edition is touch on the Punch. The front page of the Punch reveals national carrier. Headline: Domestic Airlines asks court to terminate federal government Ethiopian deal. Air Peace Azam Airlines seek withdrawal of Nigerian air license. AGF Malami Ethiopian Airlines Civic Card Nigerian Air listed as defendant. So basically now from the top story they say that Nigerian Airlines, Nigerian local airlines are wary of the deal with the federal government and the airlines. And this is something that a lot of us have come out to say. It seems like a good deal. Yeah. Africa helping Africa, Africa investing in Africa. Exactly, and Ethiopia is #1 in Africa. And it seems like the right deal. So apparently there must be a reason for these airlines because they understand aviation better than we do. So probably there's a cutback on a lot of, maybe a lot of gains they had to make, and it just, trickle down into worse relations. But if you want to find out more about that, you can get that on page 2 of the Punch Nigeria. Right. Top hand of the paper says rising inflation drives consumption spending to 57 trillion naira. We have done page 17. COVID-19 often 371,100 Nigerian children report. Wow. That is huge. So during a pandemic, 371,000 plus Nigerian children have been offloaded.
Oh my God, that's so horrible.
That is horrible. Now, CBN, Central Bank of Nigeria, releases $3.5 billion for foreign education on the Buhari. Page 17. Looking at the bottom half of the paper, it says flood affected 3.2 million Nigerians and 1.4 million displaced, says the United Nations. We have it on page 30. Missing these women found killed by Lagos one-chance robber in page 5. Very sad there. Celeste is talking about security, talking about how security is fundamental to having our stakeholders, having investors come into your country. Now, when the investors come and read stories like that,
it's literally scares them
away. Also, Celestial Church sacks God, apologizes for attacking Punch Man. All right, that is a personal
personal drama.
Punch business. We have that on page 5. All right, moving on from that, we head to the last paper of the edition as we touch on the Star from Kenya. The front page of the Star from Kenya. The front page from the Star from Kenya reveals Azimio fallout, why ODM is apologetic. Jubilee and Kanu have threatened to abandon coalition over parliamentary jobs. We have that on page 2. Also, Salah Yakub, MP behind push to scrap term limit for president. I really do not agree with politicians that try to scrap a limit, towards the presidency. I understand that sometimes the 4 years duration might not be enough to execute your mandate. And sometimes maybe increase it. Yeah, but when you scrap a limit, you literally just give him a ticket to all. Like, it is very, very hard to unseat an incumbent president.
That's as in, it's like not just hard; it is near impossible.
Now you now say a limitless term. It means every term. We've seen what happened. We've seen what has happened in Uganda. We've seen what has happened in Cameroon.
And then they say it's democracy. You're now asking. Talking about Cameroon, I saw a video during the weekend. Paul Biya was in. He traveled, I wasn't sure of the country, whether he was in France or one of these countries, and he was with some of his supporters celebrating the 40 years in power. And then some paying Cameroonians in diaspora came there, scattered the place, set these people aflame. Like they scattered the place, the cake, poured blood, I think blood, flour, and they were just saying, what are you celebrating 40 years of what with democracy, you're an assassin, and they literally said them. And when I was watching that video, because I'm not in Cameroon and I don't really understand what's going on, I just literally felt the pain of the diasporans. And you're like, you have the effrontery to celebrate, like what are you actually celebrating?
No, but to put it into perspective actually, when you say 40 years in power, it means there's of the 40-year-old men in Cameroon, 40-year-old men and women.
Like, I can't comprehend it.
They've known no other president but Paul Biya.
And there's another story I read on African News talking about the fact that when he talk about the issue of his successor, everybody just goes silent. You're like, I don't understand.
You don't talk about it.
Is this not democracy? Is it autocracy? Are we practicing monarchy? Which system of government is Cameroon practicing? Can we just be clear with it?
The type of government a lot of politicians want to practice where they have no limit to terms. And this is my problem. If you want to have one term, you can say one term 10 years. I'm fine with that. educate your mind with oversight. We talked about this already.
Yes.
Have proper oversight where you are controlled. You can be controlled. A balancing act.
Balance of power.
Have 10 years. Look at, I really admire the system of government China practices. I know it's a one-party system. It's not perfect. There's no government system that is perfect. But is it effective? Is it working?
It is.
It's shown that Africa, democracy hasn't exactly worked. But maybe we could adapt to what the Chinese, a little bit of communism mixed with democracy, something.
Yes, find a balance, find our rhythm.
Exactly. We need to find our own way. That's the thing. Africans need to find African. We cannot just copy-paste what they have there.
Exactly, and because the dynamics are different.
Exactly. And you see what China has. China has consistency. It has continuity. It has that. It has
seamless flow.
Exactly. And this is, but now when you come and say limitless, you get Paul Biya. You get what Alassane Ouattara wants to start trying. You get from Chad. That's what you get. You get Equatorial Guinea, Nguema family. That's what you get. And then when they leave, when they're ready to leave out, they give it over. They hand over the baton.
To their sons.
And then it continues, and that's what you get again. Singbe. And this is the example. The examples go on and on and on in Africa, and it's wrong because that is not the concept. That is not what democracy was taught to us as children, as students in school. So yeah, let's take a couple of more papers, and we can stop out here. Also, infidelity made our marriage stronger. Wow, has come out to say in page 3.
Okay, that's a fascinating story.
Also revealed 140 paraceuticals fails performance target. We have that coming from the University of Nairobi after making a long-out research on that. Also, local flea homes as camel herders invaded villages. We have that on page 21. Well, this is all we have.
You talked about herders invading villages.
Yeah.
In Kenya.
Yeah.
There are some stories that you just think about when you read the stories. You just think about Nigeria because I felt the herder farmer crisis clash was something that was just particular and pertinent to Nigeria. But apparently, you can just see that in different parts of Africa. This farmers and herder clash. These herders are people that can tackle us. How would you go into somebody's farm and then you say you want to graze your cattle and then your cattle eat somebody's waste, and at the end of the day you want the farmer to be looking at you? I just feel there should be, when we call grazing a particular, the way you have ranches in the United States and in Europe where you have a particular area that is just streamlined for ranching. I think that's what we need in Nigeria. They should just stay in a particular area. They should not be moving from one state to another, causing mayhem in the country.
Because that's what is happening. You keep moving, and then this...
At the end of the day.
All right, this is all we have on the African newspaper review. Over to you, Hazel.
Thank you so much. All right, we're going to be continuing the news, concluding with this story. And this says the Igbo Kwenu for Ashiwaju, a brainchild of Omalu Gweku Progressive Initiative, has drummed support for the presidential ambition of the All Progressive Congress candidate, Ashiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And this OPI is led by Ambassador Mrs. Ginika Tour, a federal commissioner for the Federal Character Commission, hosted a town hall meeting in Ikeja, Lagos.
Gunshots were heard during the visit of Nigeria's presidential candidate, Atiku Abubakar, to Borno State in the northeast of the country, where an Islamist insurgency has uprooted millions. The region also faces extreme food shortages as farmers were also forced to abandon their fields. During the rally at the capital, Metohuey, the former vice president and presidential candidate promised to restore peace to the region and the rest of the country. The presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, said he is committed to fighting insecurity in Borno State and the entire country if voted into power in the 2023 polls. Atiku, who is from neighboring Adamawa State, also vowed to revamp the Lake Chad Basin Authority to provide job opportunities for people and farmers in the northeast region. He said he will reactivate all exploration in the Lake Chad Basin and will end the 2-year blackout in Metohuey. Atiku stated this while speaking at the PDP presidential campaign rally in Metohuey, Borno State.
If PDP is elected, we shall restore peace and order in Borno State, not only in Borno State, throughout the country. We reactivate Chad Basin Development Authority so that our farmers can go back to farm, so that we can produce food for our own people, and so that we can also reduce unemployment. And we promise him on that.
Atiku, who was Nigeria's vice president for 8 years, also promised to reduce taxation. During the event, Atiku, who spoke majorly in Hausa.
And of of course, to end this news edition, here is a recap of our top stories. On this news edition, we talked about the fact that the candidate for the All Progressive Congress was supported by one of the Igbo people, and she's showing her support for the All Progressive Congress, Atiku Abubakar.
We also spoke on Twitter on how Elon Musk has sacked and wiped out the entire Ghana office in Ghana, the African office in Ghana, which is a pretty big disappointment.
And dear viewers, this is where we conclude today's edition of This News, coming to you live and direct from Golfe TV Africa here in the city of Cotonou. I'm Hazel OGOIGBE.
I'm Metohuey Michael, ADOGLO. And do have yourself a lovely day.